at 18, 19, and 20, because these are TEAC 2A 4F. If you look back on the front at the blueprint, 2A 4F is I can solve quadratic equations. Okay, so solving quadratic equations, that's actually our next unit. We didn't get to it this semester on our campus, but there's 2 questions on the semester exam over it. So this goes with the factoring that we were just doing. When I was explaining to you that when you looked at the graph, the zeros, the x-intercepts, those are the solutions where the graph crosses the x-axis. Okay, so when we're looking at these on the semester review, we're just going to plug, all we have to do is plug them into the calculator. So I just want to show you how to make sure you've got them plugged in correctly and what you're looking for there. Okay, and then let me pull up Desmos on the other half of my screen. Here we go. So number 18 says to solve this, all you have to do is plug this in. Now, I don't know if it'll let me do it with equals 5. Oh, it does. I wasn't sure if it would make us solve and move the 5 over and have it set equal to 0, but it's letting me type it in just like that. So I can see the graph of this function. You can zoom out to double check, but this is just a quadratic, so it's a parabola, and we can see where it crosses the x-axis. Where it crosses the x-axis, those are your solutions. So when it says solve, you have solved. My answers are -2.5 and 1. So the way that I would write that over here is I would say x equals -2.5 and x equals 1. That's it. Now, yes, I could do this algebraically by hand. If I subtracted that 5 over and looked at this, I subtracted the 5 over, so now it's set equal to 0, and I could factor this. This goes with what we were just doing on factoring. I could do my trinomial factoring, whichever method you prefer, guess and check, box method, grouping, but what it comes out to is this, okay? So this is what it would come out to with whatever, I just did guess and check in my head. You may have to do box method or grouping. I don't care what factoring method you choose. This is how it factors. And what I was explaining to you a second ago when we were doing the factoring questions is if you take each factor individually and set it equal to 0 and solve, those are your x-intercepts. So here I would have to add the 1 over. And here I would have to subtract the 5. And then divide out the 2. -5 halves. Guess what that is as a decimal? -2.5. So I got these in the calculator. I got the same answers by factoring and solving by hand. You just need to be able to do it in the calculator. We are going to spend a lot more time going over this algebraic process, doing it by hand, when we come back in January. But for now, look at it in the calculator. You just have to know it is the x-intercepts that you're looking for when you solve a quadratic. When it just says solve, the solution is the x-intercept. Okay, so for number 19, turn that one out, or here, I'll just edit it. That is 3x squared plus 6 equals 11x. So here's that parabola. Look where it crosses. Those are my solutions. Now, I would venture to guess that if this is a multiple choice question on the exam, that it's not going to have the decimal answer choice. But if there are answer choices that are fractions, couldn't you just type the fractions in and see which one matches this decimal? Yes, that's what I would do. So my solutions here from the calculator are simply 3 and 0.6 repeating. Now, again, you would probably not see it as a decimal as an answer choice. And I don't know if this would be a multiple choice or a multi-select. It might be a question that's like, select all of the solutions. And so you come and you look at the graph and you say 3 is a solution. I would select that one. And then if you saw any decimal solution or fraction solutions, plug them in, see what they are as decimals, and see which one matches this. And you would select that one as well. So far, so good? Easy enough in the calculator, right? You just need to know when you're solving a quadratic, that simply means what are the x-intercepts. Okay, so this last one here is a little different. It's a word problem. It says a ball is thrown in the air. The relationship between the time the ball is in the air in seconds, t, and the distance above the ground in feet, h, is shown in the equation h equals negative 16t squared plus 30t plus 4. So I'm going to type the equation in, except, what did I tell y'all? I can't use some random variable t. What am I going to have to use? X. And so I'm going to use x instead of t. And what am I going to use instead of h? Y. So it's going to be y equals negative 16x squared plus 30x plus 4. So here is this instance. Now, this is representing a ball being thrown, and they said time is the x, this is seconds, and the distance above the ground is the y. So you can see if you zoom out, this is like I'm standing here, I throw the ball, this is how high it goes. This is the highest it gets, and then it comes down, and when it gets here, that's the ground. So it takes 2 seconds for it to hit the ground. Does that make sense? So it's asking how many seconds will it take for the ball to hit the ground? You have to understand that the x-axis was the time. They told us that there, okay? The time in seconds, that was our x. T was time, and that's what we did x. So it took 2 seconds before it got to the ground, because the y was the height. So if the height is 0, you're on the x-axis. When the ball hits the ground, that's 2 seconds. Do you feel okay about that one? If it asks something like, sometimes they ask a different type of question there. If they said, how long did it take for the ball to get to its highest point? Well, here's the highest point. Which one of those is the time, the x or the y? The x. So it took 0.9 seconds for it to get to its highest point. Okay, so you just plug the equation in to look at the graph, and then you can answer questions using the graph. Y'all feel comfortable with that? So that is when you're solving a quadratic. Use the graph, plug it in, look at the graph, and then you're looking, solutions are the x-intercepts, or read the word problem to see what they're asking for. If they're asking for when it hits the ground, like this, or maybe when it's at its highest point. Most of the questions will be about the x-intercept or the maximum or minimum. Okay? So that is 18 through 20. Just use your calculator. Okay, let me stop that video here. I will post again in Canvas, just like I do for all of our unit reviews. I will post the semester review videos and key tomorrow. So this weekend you can check as you're working. You can watch the video for anything you're struggling with. And then you have the option of coming Monday afternoon for an optional review session if you need it. Come to tutorials today, though, to work on Unit 5 test corrections, whether it's Part 1 or Part 2. Mm-hmm.
Why did you get an 8 on the Part 2 exam for Unit 5? Because I checked my grades and it said it was like
Then that must be what you got. Let me go. I mean, I can go double check.